Okay, so good morning, and let's start with today's workshop. Welcome to the workshop on burnout to balance. So, we basically will be focusing on self care and some of the strategies for you to have a healthier and evolve into a more happier self of yourself. So move on to the workshop. Let's first start with introducing the host for today's workshop. So we have Nirvana here, who is a counseling psychologist at my tribe. Then we have Lubhavani. Then we have Vishruta Iyer. Then we have me, that is Ritu Thar, and Muskan Kataria. All of us work at Mind Tribe at a psychologist position, and we'll all be discussing and participating together for this workshop. So let's start with some of the ground rules and some disclaimer points for today's workshop that everyone needs to keep in mind. This presentation is the intellectual property of Mind Tribe. The presentation is copyrighted by Mind Tribe, so you are not permitted to video record this presentation. You are also not permitted to take screenshots or photographs of any of the slides of the presentation. Another thing that I would like to let you know is that only the slides and the audio is going to be recorded. So the names and the chat box are not to be recorded of the workshop. So if you unmute and speak, it is completely fine because your name will not be visible anywhere in the recordings. So please feel free to state concerns and type anything in the chat box. Let's start with some of the ground rules that you need for the workshop. Next slide, please, Nirmala. So you have to please keep your mic and the video off throughout the workshop. We do not want any disturbance while someone is speaking. You can definitely raise your hand later on when you have a question. Unmute only when asked or put your responses in the chat box. All the questions will be taken at the end of the workshop. And if your questions are not answered if we run short of time or we are not able to manage all the questions, then please head to Mind Tribe's Instagram and you can take part in the therapist takeover, which takes place every weekend. So you can just follow the page of Mind Tribe and you can ask your questions there. All right. So as we move forward with the workshop, let's start with a quick activity. So everyone, you can unmute yourself or type it in the chat box. How are we feeling today? What is the general mood? And also I would encourage everyone to please be very participative and interactive for the workshop. Okay, so we have some answers here. Okay, yellow, orange, good. Okay. Happy, a bit anxious. A lot of yellows I'm noticing. Good, yellow, lazy. Great, great. Red, okay. Green, nice to see some greens also. Yellow, happy. Green, happy, yellow, okay. All right. So I think I notice a lot of yellows. That is in between happy and not feeling very good, energetic. So, all right, okay. Okay, so let's start. This was just a quick activity for you to get in touch with how you're feeling right now and, focus on your emotions. Let's start with the workshop, that is, what is stress? So the first thing that we need to focus on is what stress actually is. Stress is a state of worry or mental tension which can be caused by any difficult situation. So first of all, it is a very natural human response, right? Everyone experiences stress. It can affect our physical and mental health. So it can take a toll on physically also. It can manifest physically in your body and also in your mental health. Then everyone experiences stress to some degree. So one cannot be stress free. One cannot say that I have never experienced stress, because at some degree everyone has experienced it. And then to manage that stress, we have certain stress management techniques that can help you manage it or deal with it in a more effective manner. Okay, so this is what today's workshop is going to be. And now Nirmala will be taking over from here. Over to you, Nirmala.
Thank you so much, Ritu. Right. So we did have a great knowledge of what stress is all about. Stress is, as Ritu clearly said, a constant state of worry or tension, which is always caused by a difficult situation. Now, it's very, very important for us to know what are some critical signs and symptoms that are often not noticed and left out by us when we are going through a very stressful phase. Now, let's deep dive into that. Stress is basically a very common universal experience affecting each of us in very different ways. In this section, we're going to peel back the layers and uncover not just the obvious, very obvious and overt signs of stress, but also the subtle, nuanced indicators of stress that often go unnoticed. By recognizing these signs, we're not only empowering ourselves to respond more effectively, but also we're fostering a greater awareness that can lead to improved well-being and resilience. So before I start talking about certain physical signs of stress, I'd like to know from each of you, what are some physical signs of stress that you have experienced? Any signs that you've experienced when you're in a stressful phase, you can always unmute and answer, or you can put it in the chat box. We have Marcy say trembling in the body. Yes, that's one of the very key signs. We have Smita saying headache, stomach ache, headaches, sweating, trembling, chest pain, higher heart rate, headache, sugar cravings, feeling weak, confused, brain fog. There's so many responses coming in. Heart palpitations, trembling, fatigue, sleeplessness, nausea, dizziness, breathing issues, lethargic. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone, for all your responses. Let's go ahead. First, let's start with physical signs and symptoms. Think about the times you have felt like your shoulders are tightening or experienced an unexpected headache. Stress often manifests physically through symptoms like, as all of you said, muscle tension, fatigue, frequent illness, headaches, a lot of digestive and muscle issues, and most, as all of you said, disturbances in sleep patterns. It's one of the very, very commonly noted physical sign of stress. So it's very important for us to know that our body is more like an alarm system, an alert system, signaling whenever we are in a state of stress. So it's very, very important to pay attention to these signs, as they are very crucial indicators of stress, as all of you stated about fatigue, headache, dizziness, all the commonly experienced signs and symptoms of stress. Next, let's talk about the emotional signs. Emotionally, stress can create a turbulency of feelings. You might experience mood swings, heightened irritability, or a persistent sense of anxiety. It's as if your emotional equilibrium is disrupted, making you more sensitive and prone to feeling very overwhelmed. Even the slightest of annoyance can actually create a greater sense of overwhelmness in you. These emotional shifts are very, very important to recognize, as they are reflecting your internal state, which is under stress. So it's very, very important that we don't miss out on these signs and we pay attention to them very quickly. Next, let's look at some of the behavioral signs and indicators. Behaviorally, stress can lead to noticeable changes. You may find yourself withdrawing from your social activities. You find yourself to be procrastinating more than usual, and you have trouble focusing on your tasks, which in turn you find yourself having or giving a very decreased performance, or you find yourself being very low productive at work, and a lot of absenteeism and withdrawal and social isolation are some of the very common behavioral indicators that are noticed when you're under stress. These changes in behavior can sometimes be very subtle, but they are essentially great indicators that your body is under extreme level of stress, and therefore it's very important that you recognize them early so that you can take action before your stress escalates to a further step down. Now that we saw some of the very old and possible signs of stress, it's very important that we also give importance to the subtle, very minute changes that we see in our bodies, that we're experiencing emotionally, physically, behaviorally, all those nuances which needs to be taken care of, but is what we'll be talking about in this section. On the cognitive front, stress often leads to difficulties with concentration, memory, and you might find your thoughts becoming very scattered and your decision-making skills become very, very poor. This mental fog can impact your overall productivity, your overall cognitive functioning, let it be at work or home. You find yourself having difficulties in terms of memory, in terms of concentration, and you find yourself always involved in a lot of critical thinking. So understanding these cognitive nuances is also very key to handling stress much, much effectively. When it comes to emotional nuances, the emotional nuances can be very subtle, but again, they're very, very significant. You might notice a slight shift in how you react to daily life challenges. For example, like very, very small issues, you may start to feel overwhelmed, or you start feeling very frustrated than usual. Like you just had your friend tell you something very funny, but it's the usual conversation that you have with your friend, but something that day you were under a lot of stress, you find yourself to react too angry, or you find yourself to react with too much of frustration towards it. So these emotional mood swings or the overwhelmness is because it is indicating that your body is under extreme stress. Subtle mood fluctuations, you might experience occasional feelings of anxiety or irritability that might come and go without a clear reason. So you don't know why you're experiencing what. So at one point of the day, you might feel you're very happy. At the same day, 2 hours later, you might find yourself feeling very low. So this unreasonable mood fluctuations is again a very, very common subtle sign of stress, which we need to pay a lot of attention to. Minor emotional detachment. You might find it very harder to connect with others on an emotional level. So you might find it very hard to talk with your friend, to have a very emotional connect with your friend on that day, because your body is under emotional stress and it's finding itself ways to tell it to you. So it's very important to note down to these emotional nuances can be very easy to overlook. We might just say it's just one day off, it's fine. But they're again very, very important indicators of how stress is affecting your emotional well-being. Finally, when we're talking about subtle signs, the next important one is behavioral nuances. Behavioral stress can lead to subtle changes in your actions and even in your routine. You might find yourself procrastinating. You might notice a slight delay in completing tasks or tendency to put off responsibilities. So generally, if you're a person who tends to keep up with your schedule or your timeline, you might find yourself trying to procrastinate it. Let me do it 2 hours later. Let me do it 3 hours later. It's okay. Let me not do it now. For now, let me do it later. This mild level of procrastination is again a very, very crucial, important sign of stress. Occasional social withdrawal. So you are someone, if you're very socially into parties, meeting people, and all that, you might find yourself socially withdrawing as well. There could be moments where you prefer solitude or avoid social gatherings just so that you don't feel more overwhelmed. So this avoiding is generally because you're already feeling overwhelmed. You don't want to feel more overwhelmed, so you always tend to avoid these social gatherings or meetings. Minor changes in productivity, as I said. So when there are changes in your timeline, your time schedule, or you find yourself procrastinating, obviously it's going to have an effect on the productivity that you're giving in. So your work might become a bit less efficient. But these changes are often, if you see, they're very gradual, and it might not be very obvious and very immediate also. So for you to notice all these subtle signs of stress, it will take some time, and your body is will be showing it. As I said in the previous section, some overt signs will be the first very commonly coming up symptom that you can see, and that is very useful for you. But these subtle signs like the cognitive changes, the emotional nuances, and the behavior nuances come a little later, and they're quite often very difficult to identify because we often tend to overlook things. It's okay, today it's just like that. I might be better tomorrow. You might feel better the next day for some time, but again, you'll find yourself relapsing into the vicious cycle. So it's very, very important that we also attend to these subtle behavioral changes, and as they are very early indicators of stress and can help you manage these in a very early stage before you get into something called as burnout. In very short, let me tell you, stress manifests itself in various ways: physically, emotionally, behaviorally, and cognitively. By recognizing these signs earlier, what happens is like you can take much proactive steps to manage your stress and maintain your well-being so that it doesn't affect you to a very vast level. Now, next coming to signs and symptoms of burnout. Burnout is basically the most severe form of stress that can have profound effects on your life. So burnout is basically characterized by prolonged and excessive stress that leads to emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion. You might feel yourself exhausted in all spectras of life. Now, it's time that we explore some of the signs and symptoms of burnout and how they also are because of a result of ongoing stress in your life. First, the physical symptoms. Burnout often manifests physically in extreme ways. So you might experience chronic fatigue that doesn't improve with rest. You might find yourself falling ill frequently, a persistent headache, and the physical tone of burnout is very significant, often leading to complete depletion of energy. You might feel really tired for most part of the day, even though you have not done much of work. And these signs are crucial to recognize as they indicate severe strain on your body. So the chronic, when you feel fatigue for a very long time, for 3 months together, you're feeling, despite not engaging in your day-to-day activities, despite not pushing yourself to your limits, but still there's a lot of stress and you find yourself to be very tired, too much fatigue, then it's a very clear sign that your body is experiencing burnout. So it's important that we always give attention to these signs, as burnout generally takes the form of physical signs and symptoms, and those physical signs and symptoms are very, very, very significant to most of us. Next, emotional symptoms. Emotionally, burnout can lead to a deep sense of hopelessness. You might feel really sad. There's no sense of hope. You might feel that you've just given up on everything. You don't have a sense of hope that something will go well, and a lot of detachment and profound apathy. So you may feel emotionally drained and unable to engage in activities you once really, really enjoyed doing. So if you were someone who liked going on plays or like going on outings, you might find yourself completely avoiding that. You might find yourself always sitting in the bed, never having the energy to also get up. So it is very intense feelings of sadness and a kind of detachment from everything that you once loved. So unlike stress, like which is often causing you mood swings, burnout tends to produce a more enduring sense of emotional numbness. So you might find yourself some days not feeling anything. You might just, I don't know what I'm feeling. It's just I'm feeling very numb. I'm not feeling anything more. So that is again a very clear indicator that your body is behavioral changes. Behaviorally, burnout can result in severe withdrawal. So, unlike stress, where you find yourself mildly procrastinating, but in burnout, you find yourself completely withdrawing yourself from work and social interactions. You might experience a dramatic decrease in productivity, and you might find yourself, increased absenteeism or a general sense of disinterest. You don't have any kind of interest or motivation in anything, let it be work, your day-to-day activities, or even small lifestyle things that you do for yourself. So there's absolutely no motivation, no interest, and you find yourself to just lack motivation to do anything. So again, when these signs are to the extreme, when you find yourself not having any motivation to do even the slightest of your lifestyle work, like it could be from brushing to bathing, smallest of the lifestyle things that we keep doing on a daily basis, if you're finding yourself very difficult to do that, and you're pushing yourself to do that, or like even though you've been trying, or some people have been trying to push you, you still find yourself unable to do that, and you're absolutely caging yourself, you're disconnected from the entire social life. These are again very, very clear and signs, abrupt signs that your body is under extreme stress, which is a burnout. So it's very important that we always attend to these signs and symptoms and try to work out on these. Next. Now, what are some subtle changes that we might experience when it comes to burnout? First, cognitive nuances. Cognitively, burnout often leads to severe difficulties with focus, memory, and decision making. As we said in stress, this is to the greater extent where you feel that you have impaired or absolute difficulty with focusing, with concentration, with memory, with decision making, and all higher level thinking skills. You might find yourself unable to concentrate on tasks or struggling with persistent mental fatigue. Just as you feel your body is really tired, you also feel your mind and your mental state is very tired and you're under extreme stress. So these cognitive issues are a sign of burnout's deep impact on your mental processes. So you might find again that your thinking skills, your problem solving, your creative thinking has all come down drastically, and you find yourself finding it very hard to focus on even very, very small things. You might be looking at TV, but you are actually not watching it. Just looking at something. There's a series that's a favorite series of you just been playing on the TV, but you're just looking at it. It's just that you have no amount of focus on that. So when you start noticing those changes, those are very clear, subtle changes, which is caused due to burnout. Emotional nuances. Burnout brings more pronounced emotional changes, which can include deepening apathy. You may experience a profound sense of disinterest or detachment from things that used to matter to you. So, absolute withdrawal from things that you really, really like doing. It could be from people, from activities, to anything. So, whichever you had too much of interest and which you were much, much more involved before this set out, then that is again a subtle sign of burnout. Chronic emotional numbness, persistent feelings of emptiness or lack of emotional response, even in significant situations. So, absolute no kind of an emotional response. You just find yourself to be very numb to anything and everything that's happening around. That is again a very clear sign of burnout. Consistent hopelessness and ongoing sense of despair or pessimism about your situation, about how life is all about you and your future. So you'll be very self-critical about yourself. You'll be having a very negative attitude towards your life. An absolute sense of pessimism and negative is what is being surrounded around you. So these emotional nuances are even more intense and persistent, reflecting the deep impact of burnout on your emotional state. Behavioral nuances. Behaviorally, burnout can lead to more severe and noticeable changes. Again, significant social withdrawal. You might find yourself withdrawing yourself from your family, friends, social activities, avoiding interactions even you normally engage in. So you have a neighbor you used to talk to, you have your mom you used to always engage with, you absolutely shut down from everyone. You just stay in your room, and you don't wish to have any kind of interaction with anybody, and marked decline in work performance. So this could be a dramatic drop in your work efficiency and quality, which is often accompanied by absenteeism and frequent errors. So you find yourself uh, not being at the best at your work. You might find yourself always a greater sense of absenteeism at work, low productivity, which again shows a lack of, which again shows that your body is under immense stress and that you're again undergoing high levels of burnout. Extreme procrastination or inactivity, a notable increase in procrastination or an overall sense of inertia, where tasks feel overwhelming. Any task, even the smallest, from getting up to brushing to bathing, you find each and every task to be overwhelming for you. To even do that, you feel that you need tons and tons of energy, and that is like really making you feel very hopeless, very sad. So these behavioral nuances are also more severe and impactful, signaling the need for an urgent attention and intervention. So it's very crucial to remember that recognizing these signs and symptoms is not just about giving you an awareness, but it's about empowerment. Each subtle changes and overt symptom is a piece of a bigger puzzle that tells us something is important and something is wrong about our well-being. Remember, acknowledging these signs is the first step towards self-care and recovery. It's a proactive approach that can lead to a more balanced, fulfilling life. So it's very, very important that we focus on these aspects of burnout and stress so that we take necessary actions to help us from undergoing these. Now, it's important that we reflect on to whatever we have seen in the previous section. Over to you, Ms. Khan.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Nirmala, for an elaborate explanation on stress. I'm sure it must be very helpful for all you guys to understand what stress is in terms of its signs. And here I have some bonus questions for you all. So these questions require you to answer in yes or no. So first question is, do you frequently feel overwhelmed by your daily tasks and responsibilities? You can answer in yes or no in the chat box, and also make a note in your diaries if you have, because these will come handy. Okay, I can see a lot of yes, a lot of no's, mostly yes. That's brilliant. So it is very important to assess your stress. These 10 questions will help you recognize the signs of stress early so you can implement whatever strategies you want to. And before it escalates into chronic stress, which can lead to anxiety, depression, heart disease. So that's why these questions are here and they add as a bonus for you. So second question over here is, do you often feel anxious or worried even about the small things? So yes or no, you can answer. Okay, yes, yes. Aditi, Shreya, Tanvi, Prateek, Neha. Okay, so right. Moving to the next question. Thank you so much for answering, everyone. Please make a note of these also. Are you having trouble falling asleep, staying asleep, or experiencing poor sleep quality? Yes or no? This is the third question about sleep. Okay, a lot of no's. Okay, this was a mixed answer. Yes, always. All right. Now, the fourth question is, do you find yourself easily irritated or frustrated by minor inconveniences? Yes or no? Okay, Neha, Shreya, Pranav, Sophia, Aditi, yes. Ria, yes. A lot of yes. Okay. I'm sure this presentation, this workshop is quite helpful for the people answering yes. Let's move forward. The fifth question is, are you having difficulty concentrating or staying focused on your work or studies? Sonakshi, yes. Aditi, yes. Mansi, Okay, Neha, yes. Pooja, yes. Monisha, yes. Okay, brilliant. Brilliant. Great. I'm glad you guys joined. This is going to be very helpful. The sixth question over here is, do you feel a constant sense of urgency or that you're always running out of time? Abhi karna hai. Great, great, great. A lot of answers. So understanding your stress patterns will always help you to make informed lifestyle changes. For example, such as improving time management or enhancing social support. So whatever strategies you need to implement will only be discussed after you know much about whatever symptoms you are facing currently, right? So this was a great input from all you guys. The next question over here is, have you noticed changes in your eating habits, such as overeating or loss of appetite? This is a question on your appetite. A lot of eating habits changes if you binge eat, if you do not eat at all. More eating, Shipra says. Okay. Sonakshi, loss of appetite. Yes. So different people, different coping mechanisms. Mansi, do not eat at all. No eating. Okay, that is a bit of concern. We can discuss how to cope this further. Moving to the next question for now. Do you feel less interested in socializing or participating in activities you used to enjoy? So little to no interest in activities that you used to enjoy earlier. Okay, Sonakshi, yes. Neha, yes. Mansi, yes. Amazing. Always. Shipra, okay. Thank you guys for answering. Now, if you have answered yes to most of these questions, then it is clear that you're facing high levels of stress. So through these set of questions, you now are aware that, okay, something is bothering us. Now, these questions were in a way formed to assess the signs of stress that you're facing. So if you have answered mostly yes in most of the questions, then you are facing high levels of stress. So stick through and we will discuss how to combat this.
Okay. Thank you, Muskan. All right. So now we'll be looking at some ways to identify stressors in our lives and learning some practical techniques to manage them. Understanding what stresses us out is the first step to handling stress effectively. So the first one we'll be looking at is to keep a stress journal. So a stress journal will help you track what causes stress, how you react, and how you cope. And the basic pointers to this is to be, first of all, you have to be consistent. So writing in your journal daily, noting some specific events, certain times, at what places you feel stressed, and including details about the situation and your reaction to it. This could include your thoughts, your emotions, or any physical symptoms that you might be facing. For example, suppose I get stressed before an exam or a test. So before I attempt an examination, I feel I experience thoughts like, what would the questions be? What if I'm not able to answer those questions? Something like that. And physically, I'm sweating a lot. So I note these down in my diary. Focusing on patterns. So reviewing your journal regularly to identify patterns or recurring stressors. For example, I may be stressed before the work week begins. For example, right before Monday on Sunday evening, I feel stressed. So that's the pattern I've been noticing, and I will try to read to understand this pattern. Or before an exam week, I feel stressed. So noting these patterns that occur regularly. And lastly, focusing on the triggers. So any triggers, any person, any event, any situation that can lead to stress. All these things need to be noted in your stress journal. Secondly, practicing mindfulness. So mindfulness is the practice of being present and fully engaged in the current moment. And this can help you become more aware of your stressors. This could include breathing exercises, so like taking deep breaths to stay grounded, paying attention to your surroundings and sensations without any judgment, or engaging in activities like walking or eating mindfully without any other distractions at that moment. Please hold your questions till I finish this slide. Okay. All right. Thirdly, assessing your routine. Assessing your daily routine can help identify stressors related to time management and responsibilities. For example, examining your daily schedule to identify certain stressful times that you experience. For example, if you are stressed about your commute, you might want to note that down in your daily schedule and try to begin early, or try to find a way to manage the traffic that you might face. Prioritization. You will prioritize the tasks that require your utmost attention, and to reduce any overwhelming feeling that you might be feeling at that moment. Taking breaks to recharge. No one can work 24 hours a day, so taking breaks from time to time and just figuring out certain downtime that can help you get recharged is very important. And setting clear boundaries between work and personal time. Moving on to monitoring physical responses, you may notice that if you are stressed, you may, like Muskan mentioned in the previous slide, that there are some physical responses, like you may experience some tension, you may experience some headaches, some people even experience stomachache. So identifying or becoming aware of your body sensations when you're feeling stressed is very important. Then you could make a track of it, like I mentioned, keep a stress journal of it, and then practice relaxation techniques like deep breathing, box breathing, or progressive muscle relaxation if that is something that helps you. Evaluating emotional reactions. So your emotional reactions can provide clues to what is stressing you. So first of all, pay attention to feelings. Like you might be experiencing some anger, you may experience anxiety, you may even experience sadness, and then labeling these emotions. So at one particular moment, you might feel very, very uncomfortable. And at that moment, just sit down and try to label those emotions accurately. Is it anger? Is it sadness? Are you feeling anxious at this moment? And then journaling these emotional reactions in your journal. And then looking for patterns in your emotional responses to identify these triggers. For example, if you are working on a particular project or some work and you're not able to make any progress in it, you might feel very frustrated, and that is making you very, very uncomfortable at that moment. So you experience anger. So trying to label this emotion and writing it down in your journal, that this particular working on this project makes me angry, or it brings out certain uncomfortable emotions in me. Or if you face a particular person whose reactions you're not able to control or predict, you might feel a little anxious around that person. So noticing these patterns and noticing these emotional reactions that you have to identify the triggers in your environment. Next, seeking feedback. So sometimes the people around us can see the stressors that we sometimes overlook, and seeking this feedback from them can really provide new insight. First of all, talking to trusted individuals, like talk to your friend, talk to your family or your colleagues about your stress, and ask very open-ended questions about how they think, how they perceive your stress, or how you react to it, whether it is positive, whether it's negative, and be open to constructive feedback that they might give you. And then build a supportive network. Tell them how you would like them to help you out if you're feeling stressed. If you do not communicate that this is what is stressing me out, or if how you can be helped in that particular situation, you might have worse reactions to stress. So just building that supportive network around your colleagues, around your friends, to tell them what might trigger you, and then keeping those triggers to a minimum. And lastly, examining your environment. So your environment obviously plays a significant role in your stress levels. First one is to assess your workspace for any sources of stress. So your workspace needs to increase your productivity to a maximum. So if there is stress around you, you might not be able to work or function productively. So if you are facing any stress, try to if there are any stressors in your workspace, try to find that out. And also look for stressors at your home environment, a leisure space that you find very comfortable where you don't really work. Trying to identify if there are any stressors over there. For example, some people get stressed out at the sound of traffic or loud noises. So trying to eliminate those stressors at your home can be step one. Decluttering and organizing. Just 1 second. Decluttering and organizing your spaces to reduce stress. So the space around us can also give an indication to what is the state of our mind sometimes. So if the space around you is not at a clean or a neat it's not a neat space, it can also signify that your mind is not at the right space. So trying to declutter and organize spaces so that it can increase your productivity as well is number one. And lastly, ergonomics. So ensuring that your work and living spaces are ergonomically sound. So what is ergonomics? It is the art of utilizing certain things that are equipped to fit you exactly. For example, if you're sitting at a table and your chair while you're working, and your chair is not of the same height as your table, or it is not really equipped to fit your height, it can cause some stress to your back, to your legs maybe, and it can cause some long-term health problems. And this is coming from a personal experience. So making sure that the area around you is ergonomically sound, so that it decreases the stress that comes from things around you. Okay, moving on. How can increased self-awareness help us in identifying stressors? Can someone help me with the answer to this? Yes, Rakshita, please go ahead.
I think once you are self-aware, you act on the solutions rather than procrastinating on problem, because nothing just magically turns out to be good in a single day. It's a daily effort. So it takes time for one to be self-aware also, probably because we are more engaged in what we do, what we are judged for, or what our performance is, rather than what we feel. So I think that plays a really important role in identifying any mental health issues.
Mm-hmm. Okay, definitely. Yes, Smita, please go ahead.
I think without knowing problem, we cannot go or move forward towards the solutions. So first we have to analyze our problems, what feelings and what thoughts we are experiencing, and then after analyzing that, we can move towards identifying it. Because I think there is a quote that without passing the negativity, we cannot see the positivity. So this is much important to analyze our negative thoughts and feelings and emotions. So before for self-awareness, it is very important to know about our own emotions and thoughts, so we can work on towards this. So that can help us to become more self-aware.
Definitely. Thank you so much for sharing, Smita. Very rightly pointed out, if you don't know what is causing the problem, how will you try to come up with solutions to it, right? All right. So now we will look at what is the answer to this question. Right. So self-awareness allows you to recognize and understand your own emotions, thoughts, and physical responses. And it helps you identify stress triggers early, and how you react to various situations, how you can develop effective coping strategies, and basically make more informed decisions and maintain a healthier, more balanced life. Okay. All right. Moving forward. Okay. Now we'll be looking at some stress management techniques using the stress management techniques for handling stress. And the first one that we'll be looking at is the Eisenhower matrix. So this helps you prioritize your tasks, reduce overwhelm, and manage stress more effectively. So this matrix basically categorizes So the first thing it does is it divides tasks into 4 quadrants. That is, first one is urgent and important, then not urgent but important, urgent but not important, and not urgent and not important. Okay, so the first quadrant that we'll be looking at is urgent and important, and these are tasks that require immediate attention and contribute to your goals. These are crisis or pressing problems, and they are oftentimes a little stressful. For example, meeting a critical deadline that needs to be completed within 2 hours, or handling a sudden family emergency or any emergency of any sort. So that would be urgent and important. Second quadrant is not urgent but important. So these are tasks that contribute to long-term goals but do not require immediate action. This could be for your own personal growth. For example, you could include your exercise, you could include your learning new hobbies or new skills. So these tasks can prevent future crisis, but it should be a focus, right? The third quadrant is urgent but not important. These are tasks that need immediate attention but don't significantly contribute to your goals. For example, these can be interruptions and distractions. They seem urgent, but they don't really contribute to your main goals, right? For example, answering some emails or attending some meetings of some sort, but they don't really have a particular addition to your goals, like I mentioned. And the last quadrant is not urgent and not important. These are tasks that don't add value and can be eliminated or minimized. They are basically like time wasters. They don't really contribute to your goals and should be minimized. For example, excessive phone usage or social media, Instagram, etc. These are not really adding to your goals. Okay, so Eisenhower basically helps you focus on what matters. It prioritizes your important tasks and it reduces time on less important ones. It reduces the overwhelm that you might feel, and it also prevents burnout because you break down tasks into manageable steps and tackle them in order of priority. And then you also improve your time management because you are allocating your time effectively. Okay, all right, we'll move on to the next one, which is the Pomodoro technique. So this is a time management technique that helps you improve your productivity and reduces stress by breaking down work into small manageable intervals. Okay, this was a technique that was developed back in 1980s, and it was by a man called Francesco Cirillo, and it involves breaking your work into intervals, and it was traditionally for 25 minutes long, and it is separated by certain short breaks of 5 minutes. Okay, so the key component is basically a work interval. You focus on a single task for 25 minutes and then you take a 5-minute break. And after completing 4 such work intervals, which is basically 2 hours, you take a long break of 15 to 30 minutes. Okay, so what happens with this is that you have improved focus because your mind is set that you only have to work for the next 25 minutes and you have a certain goal set in your mind, right? So you have short timed work intervals that helps you maintain your focus, and it also prevents distractions. It increases your productivity because you also take breaks simultaneously. It improves your productivity, and it also reduces the burnout. And better time management because you have set a task, you have set a timer, and mostly when you set timers to certain tasks that you keep for yourself, you try to finish it according to that time. It reduces overwhelm and burnout, like I mentioned, and it also helps you deal with fatigue and stress. Okay, moving on to the next one, we have time blocking. So, so time blocking is a time management strategy. It's a method of scheduling where you divide your day into blocks of time, each dedicated to a specific task or activity. So you're breaking down your work week into bite-sized time slot where you complete activities and schedule breaks or exercise or anything. So the key components of time blocking technique is, first of all, task allocation. You assign tasks and activities to each time block. So for example, it could be from 10 to 11, I have a meeting in the morning. Okay, so and then you prioritize these tasks based on important deadlines. And then you also add certain buffer time, like between blocks, to include any situation where you might need some more time to this task, or it can overrun the time that you've set for it, or you might even include some breaks that you might need after a particular task. And it also involves keeping the timetable a little bit flexible, so that you can adjust the time accordingly. Okay, so first of all, with time blocking, what you do is basically you list out all the tasks that you want to do within the day. For example, if I want to attend a meeting, I also want to go shopping in the evening, and I also want to meet a friend. So what I will do is I'll list out these activities, and then I'll prioritize them by importance and deadline. Of course, the meeting comes first, and then my shopping comes first, and then the meeting the friend, because it's a leisure thing, I can meet her at a preferable time for both of us. It is the least important one at the moment. So I'll rank them according to importance and deadline, and then I'll create blocks. So the meeting, of course, it has a particular time, and I need to attend it in the morning, so that will come first. And then in shopping can vary for about 1 hour to 2 hours or anything, and then I will fit it in the middle of the day. And then in the evening, I can fix leisure time for myself, and then I'll make sure it fits my friend's schedule as well, and then I will put in a time block for that. Okay, and I will also include certain short breaks that I might need for my meals, for perhaps bathroom breaks, or anything for relaxation or for exercise. And basically, also keeping in mind that you can review and adjust this according to each day and see what schedule works for you the best. This is helpful, or this is beneficial, because it increases your focus, because you have already set a time slot for it, and it will help you finish the task at hand, concentrate on one task and complete it on time, increases your productivity. It reduces your burnout, and also burnout and stress, and improves your work-life balance. All right. So now we'll be looking at the importance of setting boundaries and working towards that. Okay. So setting boundaries is very, very crucial for maintaining a healthy balance between work and personal life and certain self-care activities that you have set for yourself. So boundaries help you manage your time, energy more effectively, and it also reduces stress and your burnout. And first of all, we'll be looking at identifying your boundaries, or identifying your limits and setting them. So if you want to set boundaries, you need to know what your limits are. And it differs from person to person. Some people might have different boundaries, and some others might have different boundaries, obviously. So for figuring out or self-assessing your limits, what causes you stress and where you feel overwhelmed. And then recognizing the triggers. For example, if I have to meet a particular friend or an acquaintance that I know might cause me some stress, I will ensure that I keep it towards the end of the day, because it is not a priority, and meeting that person can affect my mood, so I won't keep that on my priority. This is just an example, of course. So recognizing your triggers and how to manage them effectively. Setting clear limits, deciding what you can reasonably handle or where you need to draw the line, and communicating very clearly what your boundaries are. If people are invading your personal space, your any boundaries that you have set for yourself, it is important that you communicate, whether it's in work, whether it's in personal relationships. It's very important that you communicate it to the other person. Limiting contact and distractions. So this is key to maintaining focus and reducing stress. For example, turning off the notifications of certain apps that don't require you to be notified regularly. For example, Instagram and Snapchat, if any one of you is using it. Turning off the notifications on your phone or even on your computer, and setting do not disturb times. So this is something that one of my friends is using. She puts her phone on do not disturb from 11 to 7 in the morning, and and she makes sure that no one really disturbs her during that time. So limiting the contact and distractions, so that she can get a full 8 hours of sleep that she requires. Creating a distraction-free workspace. If you know what distracts you, you need to make sure that that you're working towards not letting it distract you or hamper your productivity. So if you feel like you keep using your phone while you're studying or when you're working, making sure that you keep your phone in the other room while you sit down to work can be very, very helpful. And managing access, so limiting your time by setting very clear boundaries on your work meetings or your calls that you might need to take, making sure that you're not accessible to them, and maintaining or communicating that you won't be accessible from this period to that period is very, very important. Scheduling breaks and downtime. I think we've gone through this. Scheduling short breaks so that you can recharge, unplugging, before you go to sleep, trying to keep 2 to 3 hours, period where you do not use any digital phones or devices, and planning ahead so that you can plan your breaks and then downtimes, because they are just as important as your work. So managing your breaks and your work is very, very, they are equally important. And lastly, adjusting as needed. If you feel that a previous plan did not work, reflecting on it and how you can adjust it so that it improves your productivity. Okay, moving on. Right, mindfulness, self-awareness. Okay, so this is the practice of being fully present and being aware of our experiences, our internal experiences, whether they are thoughts, emotions, or behavior, or bodily sensations, without any judgment. So acknowledging all the thoughts that come to your mind without judging them, and this can help you understand your reactions to stress and develop healthier ways of coping. So the benefits of mindful self-awareness is that you have enhanced emotional regulation because you're able to recognize the emotions that you're going through. So that helps you better respond to situations. You also become aware of what emotions come up and how to deal with it. Improved focus. It improves your concentration and it reduces distraction. You become better at decision making because you're aware of your thoughts and feelings, and this helps you in making more thoughtful decisions. And lastly, it improves. It helps in stress reduction and reduces the stress. Journaling for self-awareness. Just a second. Journaling is obviously a very powerful tool to enhance self-awareness. And if you want to engage in effective journaling, one thing is to be very, very consistent and try to engage in it either weekly or regular or daily, whatever works for you. Being honest about your thoughts and feelings, in discussing in detail about your days or your events or your reactions to stress, and reflecting on your journal entries to identify your patterns and thoughts. And lastly, reflection, which I think I've mentioned in the last bit, is that you have to regularly review any patterns that you see. Ask questions. Ask what could have caused this reaction from my end. Try to understand why you might have reacted in that way, and set goals to manage the stress more effectively. Next slide, please. Right. So one mindfulness technique when you're struggling is to focus on the moment by finding patience and compassion for ourselves. Oftentimes, it can be very difficult to be be compassionate to ourselves. So find that in you and try to calm yourself down, and discourage any negative self-talk by asking these questions, which is what am I feeling? Like I mentioned in the previous slide, labeling what you're feeling at that moment, labeling the emotions. Why am I feeling this way? Which is basically understanding the triggers that could have led you to feel that way, and what can I do next? What can I do next to help myself? Which is reflection, self-soothing, practicing some deep breathing techniques or any relaxation technique that can help you feel better. Okay, that brings us to the end of that brings me to the end of my part. Handing it over to Nirmala.
Thank you so much, Rustrita, for that lovely presentation. Right, let's go on to the next aspect of how do we deal with stress and burnout. A very simple aspect, which can always be done by us in a day-to-day life, building resilience. What is resilience? Resilience is basically our ability to bounce back from any adversity or stress, and it plays a very, very crucial role in maintaining our overall well-being. In this section, we'll be talking about how self-help techniques such as physical exercises, healthy routine, and positive exercises can play a major role in enhancing our resilience and building it further for us to able to handle any future stresses that we might face. Physical activity. So, physical activity is not just always about staying fit. Okay, it's a very, very powerful tool which is found to play a greater role in boosting our resilience. And researchers also found that when we are engaging in regular exercises, our body is releasing a feel good hormone called endorphins, which play a major, major role in elevating our stress and improving our mood. So exercise also promotes better sleep, increased energy, and enhances our overall physical health. So physical activity can be in terms of aerobic exercises, it could be in strength training, you can engage yourself in a gym exercise and do strength training, or it could be something very simple like going on for a 30-minute walk, a jog, a run, and it could also be some yoga exercises which you always engage in. These activities, they promote a greater endorphins in your body, which plays a major role in reducing your stress. Next, healthy routine. Having a consistent routine helps your body regulate the internal clock, and it generally promotes a sense of normalcy, which can be very comforting for the body in times of stress and adversity. So it's very important that we prioritize self-care activities such as meal prepping, setting aside time for relaxation. All these routines can play a very greater role in calming and soothing your body and helping it come to a routine. So it could be like sticking to a proper sleep routine, having 7 to 8 hours of sleep on a daily basis, taking in balanced diet, and scheduling enough amount of breaks for you during the day so that you don't feel overwhelmed. So sticking to these healthy routines play a very major role in helping soothe our body during the stressful time. Positive relationships. So it could be like having a proper support network can help you provide a great emotional strength and support. So you can always try engaging yourself in regular check-ins, engaging yourself in support groups, having being a part of workshops such as these where you get greater insights, taking support whenever you need. It could be professional help, and also engaging yourself in mentorship. All these can play a very greater role and help you build resilience so that you can handle and tackle stress in a more and more positive manner. Finally, practicing self-compassion and more kindness with oneself. Self-compassion means treating ourselves with a lot of kindness and understanding that we are always ready to offer to a very close friend. So whenever we are facing any challenges or make any mistake, it's very easy for us to be very hard on ourselves. But self-compassion invites us to respond with gentleness and acceptance instead of self-judgment. So it's very essential that we treat ourselves with a lot of compassion and kindness. So let me just tell you some very, very possible exercises which you can incorporate in your daily life, wherein you can incorporate a lot of self-compassion and kindness as well. So something, self-kindness exercise. Take a moment each day to speak kindly to yourself, especially during challenging and stressful times. Affirmations and gentle self-talk can make a big, big difference in your life. So having small positive conversation with yourself goes a long way in healing yourself. Mindful moments, practicing mindfulness, as we saw Visruta talk about a lot of mindfulness techniques. Engaging in mindfulness techniques has found to play a greater role in like redirecting yourself to the present and giving a more compassionate perspective to yourself. Setting boundaries. So let's learn to say no whenever needed and prioritize activities that bring you joy and relaxation. To set boundaries, it's very essential that we learn to say no and prioritize ourselves in those times. Celebrate smaller achievements or as well. Acknowledge and celebrate your efforts and accomplishments, no matter however small they are. In summary, practicing self-compassion and kindness is not a gentle approach. but a powerful tool in managing stress. By treating ourselves with understanding and kindness, we create a very healthier and a more supportive environment that can alleviate stress and enhance our overall well-being. Let's move on to a small quiz. Over to you, Ruti.
All right. So let's start with the quiz, which is related to myths about self-care. Here we'll be discussing some of the common myths that we notice, and let's start with the true or false questions. Okay. So I want everyone to answer in the chat box. Self-care is just a fancy term for being selfish. Is it true or false? Great, great. Okay. I feel that everyone is a lot aware about what self-care is. Yes, it is completely false. It is not just a fancy term for being selfish. Then we have the second question. Self-care always involves spending a lot of money. True or false? False. Correct, definitely. It does not have to be specific to just, you need to spend a lot of money and only then you can take care of yourself. It does not involve that. There are a lot of other techniques which do not involve money at all. Right. Then we have the third question. Self-care means always saying yes to things that make you happy. We have mixed questions. True and false. Someone is saying not always. True and false. Okay, so when we look at the bigger picture here, the answer is going to be false because it completely depends on how you're feeling at that point of time, right? So if one thing is making you happy at one point and in the next point, it always makes you happy, but in that moment it is not, then you do not have to say yes to things. So it should not be a compulsion that you always have to say yes. So the answer here is going to be false. The fourth question is, you need to have a lot of time to practice self-care effectively. True or false? Right, correct. It is false because you can take out a few moments, a few minutes out of your busy schedule to practice self-care. It does not always involve you giving a lot of time to do a self-care. So it does not have to be a routine specifically every day. If you have, then it is good, but if you don't have that time, it's also okay. Next question, next slide. Okay, so here you have to choose the correct answer. The question is, which of the following is not a common myth about self-care? Options are, self-care is a one-time event, self-care is only for people with lots of free time, self-care is about balancing physical, emotional and mental health. Which of the following is not a myth? Yes, correct. Option C, because this is a true fact that it is about balancing physical, emotional and mental health. Right, let's move forward to the next slide, please. Great. The question is, which statement about self-care is true? Option A, it always involves solitude. Option B, it can include social activities. And option C, it's always about pampering yourself. Correct. It's about pampering yourself, so you have to work on yourself, you have to make yourself feel good at that time. That is what self-care is about. Right. Next slide. Okay. The question is, what is a common myth about the time commitment required for self-care and how can it be debunked? Options are, self-care requires hours of commitment each day. Option B, self-care can be integrated into daily routines in small meaningful ways. And option C, self-care is only effective if done for extended periods. Correct. Everyone has given the right answer. Option B, it can be integrated into daily routines in small meaningful ways. Right. Moving on. The 8th question is, okay, so again we have a series of true and false questions. 8th is, engaging in self-care means you are not capable of handling stress on your own. True or false? Perfect, great. false. It is completely false. If you get stressed, that does not mean that you cannot engage in self-care or you are not doing it effectively. The ninth one is effective self-care practices are universally the same for everyone. Is this true or false? Right, again false, because it can vary from person to person. Everyone has that different and own unique way to practice self-care. So it does not have to be same necessarily. And the last statement, the 10th one is self-care practices should remain constant and unchanging throughout a person's life. Is this true or false? Right, the answer is false, because as you evolve, as you change as a human being, your self-care practices will also change. All right, so great. Thank you everyone for participating and being so interactive. Moving on with what is self-care. Thank you.
Over to you, Muskan.
Okay, I think I was speaking on mute. Now, thank you for participating, everyone, in the true and false question series. Now, here I'm going to talk about a little bit about self-care and then giving you the final bonus toolkit that we have. Now, in today's fast-paced world, it's easy to feel overwhelmed by the constant demands of family, work, whatever daily responsibilities everyone might have. Many of us are familiar with the creeping sense of exhaustion, burnout, and stress that can take a toll on our mental health and physical health as well. So this workshop was designed to address those challenges and offer you practical strategies and insights to help you manage stress and prevent from the burnout. So here, let's understand what all types of self-care are there. So briefly, this is the whole diagram. So we have in total 6 types of self-care. There's emotional activities that help you connect, process, or reflect on your emotions. Social activities that nurture, deepen relationship with others. Professional activities or tasks that ensure a healthy work-life balance. Spiritual that allow you to think bigger, more than yourself. Maybe meditate is one of them. Physical activity, as Nirmala explained, any sort of exercise, movement. Practical activities that fulfill core aspects to provide you a bit of security, safety. Now moving to the self-care toolkit creation. So next slide. So the self-care toolkit is a concept that we would like you to understand. It is a personalized collection of items, strategies, and activities designed to help you manage stress, improve your well-being, and maintain your overall health, mental and physical. So it will include all the resources and tools that you can use to practice self-care regularly and during times of stress or crisis. Why is it important? Briefly, if I have to tell you, then number one would be it reduces stress, promotes mental health, it encourages consistency. Daily, you are setting yourself into a routine, self-care routine, and it offers you a reminder, okay, I have to do this, I have to maintain my self-care. And lastly, it empowers self-management, right? What are the steps to make a self-care toolkit? So we have listed down, the first step is identify your needs. So you can also note these pointers down. Reflect on what makes you feel relaxed, happy, or cared for. Consider physical, emotional, and mental health needs. So if you feel, for example, that if I have to take care of my mental health, I feel like practicing gratitude journal at night. What is gratitude journal? Listing out 3 things that I'm grateful for the entire day. Maybe I'm grateful that my coffee smells so nice today and it gave me, such a nice mood. It put me in such a nice mood. So yeah, that's what I'm grateful for. So it's something anything that you think maybe it would contribute to your self care. Second step would be make your toolkit adjustable. So whatever needs you have, according to that, you gather your items. Physical items like books, or maybe snacks, herbal, comfortable blankets, stress balls, essential oils like lavender, jasmine. Lavender adds as a sleep aid, so that's an amazing. Maybe a lavender candle can be helpful for your toolkit. You can also include activities, maybe using meditation guides or just storing in one lovely meditation link on your self care toolkit. So that would help you. Craft supplies or digital resources, relaxation music, podcast, anything, motivational quotes, anything can contribute to your toolkit. Personalize it and organize it maybe in a box or a basket or in your, you can also put a digital toolkit if you want. Lastly, if there are any barriers that may get in your way to complete your toolkit, then you can identify those and work on those. Moving to the next slide. So being imperfect is something we all share. We have emotions that feel good and ones that are uncomfortable. It will take time to learn how to be patient with ourselves. We just wanted you to like go away with this note. Like, any questions, any queries? Yes, Zara Mumtaz.
Ma'am, good morning, ma'am. Good afternoon. Ma'am, I just wanted to ask that what if, like, I have to do something out of responsibility, like if I am at work, okay, that is my